What if Ethereum's about to do a 10x and no one sees it coming? DeFi is heating up and 2025 might be its breakout year. Whether you're brand new to crypto or already deep in the game, I've got real insights and underrated plays you don't want to miss. In this video, I'll break down what's driving the market, the projects I'm watching, and how I'm positioning for Ethereum and DeFi's next big leg. The market is currently in neutral territory with a greed number of 64. And this is a tool that I predominantly use to really gauge overall investor sentiment. At 64, that really doesn't give me a lot of concern. I start to only really get concerned when I see extreme greed. And that typically signifies to me that there is potential caution coming in the market because there can be sell-offs on the horizon. So 64 to me, really signifies that the market is in a wait and see mode, which makes sense, right? Because it is summer and institutional investors, like say hedge funds and asset managers, they often slow down trading during these months anyway. And so 64, I think is fine, right? So while things do seem quiet on the surface, this is predominantly the time that smart money starts to position. All right. So behind the scenes, you can, or at least I can only assume, and hopefully you're thinking the same way, the teams are probably researching, they're building, buying quietly, right? Getting ready for potential rate cuts, Q3, Q4, which is historically one of the most active and volatile periods in crypto anyway. So I'm positioning myself. I hope you are too. Like once we start to see this move into extreme greed territory, then I think we can really start to maybe look to pull back on some of our long positions if you have them, or look to potentially scale out in some of your long-term holds, which you should be doing anyway, right? Selling into some of those pumps. But like I said, 64 I don't think is anything to be too concerned about. But one thing I do want to highlight here is the July numbers in terms of ETF flows into Ethereum. So in July, new ETH ETF ETFs, BlackRock and Fidelity and others, they bought over 9.3 billion worth of ETH, right? That's amazing. At the same time, Grayscale, they sold off about 4.3 billion as their older investors left, right? That expensive trust. But that's still a net flow of about 4.9 billion in ETH, which is a major shift in capital. And so even with the billion sold, ETH still held steady and closed a month higher. And the fact that the market absorbed that much selling without breaking structure, to me, is a very strong signal that this isn't just maybe ETF hype. It's a sign of real demand that's holding up Ethereum's price. And you can even see that today as I'm making this video, ETH is pushing 3,900, right? I thought I wouldn't see that for a few more months. And so a ton of demand right now, which is amazing. Super excited for what's to come for ETH. So we'll see. One thing I do want to talk about as well is really some of the key narratives really helping to push crypto right now. The first one I want to talk about, which is like everywhere right now, but it's Base. Right, Base has just become like the the best L2 there could possibly be, and it's super obvious, right? It's built by Coinbase, largest U.S. crypto exchange. So what I want to do with some of these narrative pieces, at least with Base, I want to talk about why I think Base is so hot as a narrative, and some other narratives I feel too, which are going to continue to push this cycle where you can potentially see some gains. So like I mentioned earlier, Base is built by Coinbase, right? So that means instant credibility, built in distribution, a smooth path for potential onboarding for all of their millions of users. Now they have the new Coinbase Smart Wallet plus the Base native app. So users can basically go from fiat to unchained in seconds, right? no need to have the browser extension or seed phrase, which has predominantly been a big source of friction when it comes to onboarding new users. So you can literally bridge to base inside the Coinbase app, and that's huge from like a retail adoption perspective, in my opinion. Second reason, right? Their ecosystem is going crazy, right? Full blown meme coins, um, Toshi, Degen, you name it. But they also have crazy utility plays as well, like things like, say, Aerodrome or Moonwell. Mamo popped up recently, and some are even smaller cap plays, which are still great utility plays, things like Arcadia, right? Which is, in these kind of programs and protocols are building serious DeFi infrastructure, right? Third, it's built for scale. Base uses Optimism L2 tech stack. So basically it means it offers low fees and fast transactions, which is perfect for trading, farming, which is a huge part of DeFi, and then running airdrop quests as well. Daily activity, users are climbing like crazy, incentives are flowing, and that's exactly how you want an ecosystem to be, especially if you're going to park your money there for the mid to long term, or even some of these short in and out meme plays that you might have. You want some confidence that the chain will continue to be there in the long term, and that it's not just fake fundamentals, right? Churning of TVL. Fourth, the narrative power, right? Just like Binance Smart Chain had its breakout moment in 2021, Base is being positioned as the Coinbase chain, right? It's US compliant, super clean UX, fully integrated into Web 2 and Web 3 bridges. They've done everything right from a US compliance perspective, and I think that's why you're seeing them run really, really crazy right now. And so finally, I do want to touch on this point. Base is really where I think a lot of the new joiners to crypto will enter the space and predominantly stay, right? So you can think of it as a place where retail plays, right? For a lot of new users, their first interaction with crypto will probably be with the Base app, right, as their first real on-chain experience, which makes that completely sticky. And so if this cycle is all about onboarding a new wave of users, which we will need to be able to push our bags forward, then Base is essentially that front door. So you can see here on the screen, 4.36 billion in TVL, all-time high in terms of TVL for Base. So they're crushing it. They're doing really, really well. And I'm excited to see what they do next. So next narrative I want to talk about is RWAs. And the reason I want to talk about RWAs is because things are getting pretty crazy there as well. RWAs are things like, say, US treasuries, invoices, and real estate. But instead of those things sitting in banks or, like, say, Excel spreadsheets, they're now being tokenized on chain where they can be traded essentially and used to earn yield. Over 8.2 billion worth of RWAs are already live and earning real yield across DeFi, which is nuts. And there was some early pioneers in this space when it came to RWA. So think of MakerDAO and Centrifuge, which led the way here. MakerDAO brought like private credit and real world lending into crypto, and the Centrifuge helped businesses tokenize invoices and access on-chain liquidity. But now it's not just like the crypto native projects anymore. It's big names. Let me scroll down here so you can see. It's big names like, say, Franklin Templeton, right? BlackRock are building Ethereum-based funds that settle directly on chain. So there's no need for a middleman. There's no off-chain delays. And that's a huge deal. Right? It shows that Ethereum isn't just for DeFi anymore. It's becoming like the financial plumbing for RWAs. And so when trading things like this, right, from a traditional finance perspective, it's really all about building the vaults and the funds directly on your chain. Like, that's not hype, that's full infrastructure. So I think this is a crazy narrative to watch. A couple projects that I've either purchased in the past or looking to accumulate would be Clearpool, which is a ETH mainnet project, and that's focused on institutional credit markets, and then Maple Finance as well, also a mainnet project. They bring like collateralized lending to real world borrowers. So check those out if you are interested in RWA space. I think that's going to continue to go crazy over the next few years. But if you're only concerned about this cycle, not sure if there is a play that would go, say, 10x in the next, let's say, 3 to 6 months, right? All right. So next narrative I want to touch on is stable coins. And I know stable coins is like might not be the flashiest narrative, but it's probably the most important narrative, I would say, right now. Because while there's like people watching prices, smart money is watching liquidity, right? And stable coins, because that's the fuel that keeps DeFi and crypto moving. So like let's break it down. Like what's really going on, why it matters, um and what are some key things we should be thinking about, right? So the stablecoin piece. Why is this important for something like, say, Ethereum? Well, it's because things are booming, right? Total supply now is at 265 billion. That's up 23% year to date. 140, is that right? Actually, no, 132 billion of that is Ethereum, right? 50% of that, right, in terms of stable coins. And they have like, I think 750 wallets are using stable coins on Ethereum every week, which is insane, right? So why does something like that even matter for DeFi, right? Well, because stable coins equal DeFi liquidity, right? It's like the engine, right? Stable coins are the base currency for almost everything in DeFi. So if you're trading pairs on Uniswap or Aerodrome, or you're lending and borrowing on Aave, or you got tokenized assets and RWAs, when stablecoin supply rises, these DeFi pools grow. So each interaction or each minted coin boosts Ethereum TVL over time, which directly impacts the price. Second, every stablecoin transfer burns ETH, right? So stablecoins don't use ETH, but every transfer pays gas in ETH. So that means more stablecoin usage equals more ETH being burned, which slowly reduces ETH's total supply, especially when activity spikes. And so that would mean that as the circulating supply of ETH gets burned, price will also go up as well, which is great for anyone that's holding ETH. So if you're holding ETH, that's huge, right? Stable coins backed by ETH drive more demand. So some stable coins, like say things like say DAI or Curve USD, USDE, use ETH or stake ETH as collateral. So as stablecoin demand grows, these protocols, they need to lock up more ETH, tightening the supply even further, right? So there's less ETH on the market. Regulation, right? This is a huge one. The Genius Act that just passed, and that gives U.S. banks and fintech companies the green light basically to issue fully backed stablecoins. And so analysts, and I'm making this assumption as well, is that there's probably a second wave of growth that comes from that to ETH as being the number one chain for holding those stable coins, right? If you're minting billions, potentially trillions of dollars of stable coins and it's going on one chain, the value of that chain has to rise, right? Like I don't think there's any way to get around that. So the TVL, the value of the underlying asset which those stable coins will be housed, has to go up. So there has to be a repricing for ETH that happens at some point. Now, how high can it go? I have no clue, right? I've heard numbers like say 5K, 6K, 7K, 10K, 15K. Will that happen? No idea. But if there was potentially one person who was trying to get it there, it would be this guy, right? Which leads me into my next point, and that is some very interesting things happening from an Ethereum perspective beyond just the stable coins that will hopefully push our backs even further, right? And that's this guy right here, Tom Lee, ex Fund Strat head of research, and he's now back in a new firm called BitMine, and they're calling it basically the micro strategy of Ethereum. They already have about 250 million raised, I believe. And their mission basically is to accumulate ETH as a strategic treasury reserve asset, with the goal of owning like 5% of the total circulating supply, which is insane. And they're not the only ones, because there's other companies like, say, Sharplink, who are doing something similar. And then you have, which blew me away, then you have something like this, Peter Thiel, founder of Plantier, who that company, he blew that up, and that went, I think, 20x or something like that. I think he's dropped what is a 9% stake in BitMine as well. So that's huge, right? That's huge for crypto. That's huge for the future of ETH. So I'm hoping to see some big numbers this cycle. Like I said, we'll see where things end up. Will it be 15K? I have no idea. If it goes that high, I'm obviously going to sell some of that to be able to roll that back into other projects I'm looking at as well. And that's on and off chain. So we'll see, right? This is definitely a shift forward toward like more institutional accumulation at scale. So happy to see it. All right. So with that being said, I do want to talk about some key projects that I'm looking at in this space right now. I'll touch on just a few, but what I want to touch on is it's the meme coin, but it is SHIB on Base. And like I said before, Base is a hot narrative, and so if you're gonna be with a hot narrative, you really want to go and spend your time accumulating the right coins in that ecosystem that's doing really, really well. And right now you can see that is Base, right? So something like this meme coin, SHIB on Base, I try not to overthink things like this, especially when it comes to meme coins. Like, you can come here, you can try to plot, you can try to figure out where is supply and demand and all that type of stuff. Like, it's a meme, right? You get in at a low price, you get in the Telegram, you get on the Twitter, you go to the website, you kind of engage with the community enough to kind of see what's going on, and you let that pump, right? And so this is a derivative of the main coin, and typically I don't mess with derivatives, but this one this one spoke to me, right? And you can see from the price action, it's actually doing pretty well. After hitting a little bit of turbulence down here, is making some higher highs and higher lows, and as you can see, now it's taken off, right? Sitting at 3.4 million market cap. I got in around 1.2 market cap, so I'm feeling pretty good about my position right now. It's a familiar brand. It's fresh on Base, right? Low resistance for retail flows. It's already caught a few pumps, and it's kind of poised for that meme coin rotation if we do get some type of super cycle here. And it has room to run, right? So I'm not trying to like reinvent the wheel on this one. I'm just riding it, right? So I think this can probably hit somewhere between 5 to 10 million market cap. How soon does it get there? I have no idea. But if you're interested in something like this, I would say jump into the Telegram, see how those guys are trying to position this project. I think they're dropping like billboards all across America, like 1,500 billboards or something like that. I think they might even be taking out some Google ads. So if that's the case, now is a good time to buy. If you want to wait for a pullback, potentially down here to this $2.4 million level, there might be a good chance as well. All right. The second play I want to talk about here is Billy. So I saw this a couple of days ago. Wasn't sure what the hell it was. Started following the group on X. hopped into Telegram, and it seemed like these guys are really trying to cook this meme up. It's supposed to be the mascot for base, more of like an unofficial mascot, right? Um, from the kind of stuff they're pushing out in terms of content, it actually seems pretty sweet. So that's why I jumped in this. I got into this around like say I think it was like 1.5 million market cap. So it's doing okay right now. We'll see how high it can go. I mean, as you can see, it hit an all-time high before of about 4 million market cap today. So we'll see. We'll see where it can go, and go from there. Other meme I want to talk about is Noice. Noice is also a very interesting project. What I like about Noice is that I feel like it's just a slow cook on this one. But it's hitting some big numbers. Like I got in at this like 7 million market cap, and right now it's at 15 million, which is a really nice gain. The volume is pretty decent, liquidity is pretty decent as well. I'm actually doing a different kind of setup with Noice. Instead of just buying and holding for the appreciation on Noice, what I've actually done is I've taken the amount I invested and I put it into a liquidity pool on Beefy. And in that pool, it's Noice and wrapped ETH, and that's generating about 300% APR on that position. So I'm getting the capital appreciation from Noice and wrapped ETH, along with the compounding effect of the pool on Beefy, because it compounds the rewards directly back into the position to buy more Noice and to buy more wrapped ETH. So that position is going really well. A couple utility plays I want to talk about. This chart is just ridiculous. Seeing this makes me excited for folks and also super sad for myself, right? I saw Zora on the base app when Brian Armstrong and team they gave that big presentation a couple weeks ago. And I thought to myself, hey, you know what? I might pick up a small bag of that. I didn't do it. I wasted time on other projects. And this thing literally did basically a 10x from where I saw it. I know there was some controversy around, I think, the airdrop for this. So I think that's why a lot of people faded it after it dropped off. I mean, it was sitting down here at, 24, 30 mil. I mean, for a good 2 weeks before this thing took off. And so what I understand about Zora is that it has a similar concept to how Virtuals works, where all of the tokens that are created from the creators is, I think, paired with the Zora token as well. And sort of like this flywheel effect. So I think this probably will continue to run. How high will it go? No idea. But I mean, based on this alone, this is a crazy vertical chart. So happy to see it. We'll see how things go from here. I don't think I'll buy at these levels. If there's a larger pullback, maybe this week or next week, I'll probably look to scale in with a little bit of size. But for right now, I'll just let that cook. All right. Last one I want to touch on here is Arcadia Finance. I like Arcadia Finance a lot. One of the main reasons I like Arcadia is because it is a CB venture-backed project. And if you know anything about CB venture-backed projects, they like to help their projects win in the space. So then that project can then act as a flywheel for Coinbase long term and help them generate additional revenue on top of their other business ventures as well. Think of something like, say, Aerodrome, which will be or is the predominant DEX for Coinbase and is built directly into the Coinbase app. So something like Arcadia, there's other leveraged and margin-based platforms on Base, but nothing I've seen that is already CB venture backed and is focused in that way. I know one thing for them is they had a exploit a couple weeks ago, and so that tanked their TVL you can see that we're at 13 million, and that went all the way down to 1.4 million. I mean, I was accumulating at really all these levels. And I even staked some of my coins as well on the Arcadia platform for two reasons. One is the APR was decent, so I'm gaining additional Arcadia tokens as it's being staked. One thing to note is that there's a 30-day cooldown on that, and so if you're looking to get your coins faster, you will have to pay a penalty. But there's no need to do that, right? If you believe in a project. And then second is that there's a potential season 2 airdrop as well. So for the folks who are not working on that airdrop, that gives me a leg up as well if there's additional tokens or just different things that could come from that airdrop. So super excited for what Arcadia has to offer at these levels. If you are looking for another kind of beta play in terms of lending or trading or like margin type of DEX work, then something like this I think could be a good addition to a portfolio for the last half of this cycle. Because if you miss something like, say, Aerodrome, which is already at 700 million, obviously Arcadia doesn't have that kind of TVL or those kind of holders, but something like this, could definitely run to, say, 20, 30 million from the level it's at right now, right? And that would be some nice X's on that. So we'll definitely see. All right, guys. So I've run through a few things, right? Run through just overall market sentiment. Talked a lot about what I see for Ethereum coming up and why I'm so bullish on ETH and why I think things can grow. So I want to just briefly talk about how I'm playing things, right? So here's what I'm doing right now. One is I am slowly rotating out of my stable coins into ETH and base native yield farms. So not only am I buying tokens that I like and projects that I think that can run, I'm also yield farming those, right? So like I said, I have my Noice play that I'm doing. I do a lot of yield farming with ETH, USDC on base as well. I get Aero tokens from that. And I predominantly either roll those back into my position to compound, I buy more ETH with that, or I go off and buy different projects. So that's been going really well. Second, like I said, I'm looking at other projects as well. Things like, say, Mamo, which are probably a little bit undervalued at this level still, given the flywheel effect for things like, say, Moonwell. I'm DCAing into those ETH dips to be able to go onto, say, platforms like Moonwell, where I'm like lending out my ETH and borrowing against that, which are some advanced strategies I'll talk about in some other videos I'm going to roll out. And then lastly, I'm just keeping my eye close on, say, ETH and the BTC ratio, right? Because once ETH really starts to outperform BTC consistently, that's when I'll really start to rotate into altcoins more aggressively. Things are a bit hot right now in terms of, say, the RSI. So if you look at those charts, you'll see things are definitely overbought. Things can stay at those elevated levels for a while. How long, I don't know, before we get some type of correction. Do I think it's going to be a massive correction? No, I do not. I think it'll be maybe 10%. Anything larger than that, we'll see. But that's not a reason to, I don't think, sell at these levels. Given the fact that there's still a ways to go in the cycle, there's potential rate cuts around the corner, maybe more trade deals and less tariffs, and just more certainty in the market. So we'll see. All right, guys, let's wrap. If you feel like this video helped you understand some of the market dynamics or DeFi, hit that like button, hit that subscribe. And also, just comment below, right? What are some projects you're watching that no one's talking about yet? And if you want deeper breakdowns, strategies, and tips, and just early access to plays I'm tracking, join our newsletter or book a free strategy call, which we're going to start to roll those out pretty soon as well. Links in the description. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.